Hi everyone, this is a remote viewing 5-year forecast for our new CICO that we are calling CICO 34. It is 2023 and our understanding of CICOs and how to chart their growth has changed dramatically since we first started this remote viewing experiment. As usual, we offer our CICO Plus forecasts free to the public to watch as videos on YouTube, but the real name of the assets in these forecasts are changed so that the name referenced in the video is fictional. Those who are interested can watch the forecast to see if they want to purchase the actual identity of the assets during the forecast period. If you are already familiar with the mechanics of our CICO projects, feel free to skip to this time signature to see the numerical results of CICO 34. Remember, we publish our CICO Plus forecasts as a subscription model where those people who purchase a CICO Plus subscription get the identities of all published CICO Plus forecasts, plus all future CICO Plus forecasts that are available and current at least through the end of the year 2023. There is no extra cost for this. CICO Plus forecasts typically are for a minimum of 5 or more years. However, we occasionally will update the forecasts, which usually extends the forecast further into the future. We publish results that are positive as well as negative. It's a good idea to be aware of both sides of the coin, so to speak, for obvious reasons. But, of course, some CICO Plus forecasts have very strong and positive results, and we are always on the lookout for those ones. We focus on probing for adoption in these CICO Plus sessions. The reason why we focus on adoption is because it conceptually parallels the collective DeepMind probe we are so used to utilizing in our non-financial remote viewing sessions. You see, adoption refers to the collective number and depth of which people and institutions are involved with a given CICO at the beginning of the forecast relative to the end of the forecast. This way, we are actually just using a version of a collective DeepMind probe through our aggregate temperature probe analysis and complexity analysis to get a read on the relative change in adoption that occurs with regards to a given CICO over the course of a forecast period. Theoretically, if there are more subjects or groups of subjects in the form of institutions getting involved in a given CICO with regard to both numbers and intensity, then we would want to know this. The same goes for negative trends. A set of sessions hinting towards a reduction in subject involvement or adoption in any given CICO would likely be that people might be abandoning a given CICO. We have a video on our website that has a basic description of the Farsight forecasting method as it was used for this study. The method involves two parts, a base target that is known now, and then other elements that are added to that target at the end of the forecast period. We are trying to perceive those other elements. For this project, we used different base targets for different viewers. Moreover, all of the viewers had similar or corresponding numbers of elements added to their base surface, and those results tell us how the currency or assets will perform over the forecast period, according to the rules of our experimental design. In our studies, there are a possibility of up to 11 elements that can be placed in a target using CGI software 5 or more years into the future, and our remote viewers are describing what the target looks like at the end of the forecast period after it is fully assembled using CGI software. The rules of how those elements are employed in the target creation process exist now, and those rules are tied to how the currency performs during the forecast period. So, when our viewers describe what the target looks like in the future, we know how the rules will be applied, and thus how the currency will perform. We utilize an aggregated version of the temperature probe analysis for this CICO. The temperature probe analysis is normally used to obtain direction indicators for specific timelines, such as week to week, month to month, or year to year. The aggregation method helps consolidate the timeline measurements so that we have one measure for the entire forecast period, rather than week to week, year to year, and so on. This tends to increase the accuracy of the temperature probe analysis, and it allows us to obtain an independent measure for the aggregate CICO change. We can then compare this with the measure obtained using complexity analysis. Then we can average that portion across all viewers to get an overall index for the currency that ranges from 0 to 1. An index number of 1 would mean that the viewers perceived every possible element that could be used in a forecast, and that would indicate a currency would be very popular and would be adopted by an exceptionally large community. An index number of 0 would mean the opposite, which is that the viewers perceived no additional elements over and above the base surface, which would mean that the currency would be expected to perform badly in terms of adoption. Finally, we have begun ranking our CICO Plus projects. The more projects we do, the more results, both positive and negative, can be relative. This goes beyond just seeing if a CICO goes up or down. These ranking numbers help with relative comparisons on average, and I emphasize the words on average. So, with our CICOs with positive results, one should not say that a CICO with a lower ranking will absolutely do worse with respect to change in adoption than a CICO with a higher ranking. But on average, we are expecting that there will be a general correlation between the ranking numbers and the relative change in adoption of a CICO. For example, we expect CICO 2, which is our highest ranking CICO, to have a higher probability of being well adopted by a significant and perhaps larger user base by the end of the forecast period than our lower ranking CICOs. Similarly, we expect our CICOs 14 and 20, which have lower rankings, to experience lower levels of change in adoption at the end of the forecast period. So on average, we expect our higher ranking CICOs to have greater levels of change in adoption than our lower ranking CICOs. But again, that is with respect to change in adoption, not price. Some lower ranking CICOs may end up being very expensive. We are primarily interested in whether a currency will be utilized by a significant user base in the future. And sometimes a relatively inexpensive currency may be used by lots of people and institutions. So the rankings should be considered approximate relative guides to currencies that will gain a significant following. We expect there to be notable variations with these results as well, where, say, one lower ranking CICO may sometimes end up having a larger change in adoption than a higher ranking CICO. But on average, the theory is that this ranking for adoption will give some guidance with respect to change in adoption levels. Take a moment now to look at this updated chart of our current CICO rankings. That way, you know which CICOs have the highest rankings in our projects with positive results. Now let me explain what our results were for CICO 34. CICO 34 has a ranking of 15. CICO 34 is relatively positive. Our 3 viewers describe the future target as having 4, 5, and 2 additional elements out of a possible 11 elements that are added to the base target. Normally, targets with 3 or 4 added elements are good indicators of positive growth. Now remember, the aggregate temperature probe analysis helps us interpret the complexity analysis. More specifically, the temperature probe analysis has 24 measures for temperature that are mapped to changes in adoption for this currency. Of the 24 measures for temperature, 16 are positive and 8 are negative. If you weigh these numbers by their actually perceived temperatures, then the numbers are 25 positive and 14 negative. When combined with these positive indicators for aggregate temperature probe analysis, this indicates a positive outlook for CICO 34 for the 5-year period between November 10th, 2022 and November 9th, 2027. So our remote viewing results are positive for CICO 34 in terms of change in adoption. This does not guarantee that the CICO will perform well over the next 5 years, but given that we now have multiple remote viewing sessions done by very experienced remote viewers that all indicate that the CICO's future performance is strong, this suggests that the future timelines for CICO 34 are generally positive. In terms of timing, we expect the strongest growth and adoption for this CICO to occur in 2023 and in 2027. Now remember our disclaimer, no one at Farsight is a licensed financial advisor, so anything that anyone at Farsight does that relates to using remote viewing to predict financial or economic outcomes of any type, including their performance, however defined, or selling prices of cryptocurrencies, stocks, commodities, or anything else, is done for entertainment and educational purposes only. Everyone doing investments are doing so at their own risk. These are experiments in remote viewing, and there are no guarantees or warranties being made, either expressed or implied. Nonetheless, these efforts are truly interesting on a grand scale, and we at Farsight believe that after we do this for a while, it will be hard for anyone to ignore the reality of remote viewing. As we have said in the past, may you follow your own intuitions, make wise investment decisions, and become rich. Thank you for supporting our efforts at Farsight. Together we will change the world for the better. I'm Aziz Brown from Farsight.